the direction of all of this, that the body and the world in general, the more you go through the mind training of A Course in Miracles, the more you're aware that there is no world apart from what you think. You know, that's something that Jesus says in the workbook. There is no world apart from what you think. And then he even goes so far as to say there is no world, exclamation point. But let's start with there is no world apart from what you think. It's this washing away of this idea that there's an outer world and there's an inner world. This washing away this perception that somehow the mind is associated with the brain, and that the brain thinks. But the brain has electrical impulses, but there's a lot of things that are part of the human body that obviously have no direct connection to mind, because mind ultimately is abstract and it's not material at all. It doesn't have electrical impulses. Even some of the metaphors that are used where it talks about we're all energy, you could say that, but not kind of an energy that we would say like an energy that is measurable. Who you are can't really be measured, like electricity or something like that. Even the energy metaphors start to break down the deeper you go. But the most important thing is that the more aware you become of the mind, the less aware you become of the body. And at one point Jesus says, you are mind, holy mind, purely mind. W-H-O-L-L-Y. In other words, you're purely mind. And that you come closer and closer in awareness to this experience that everything is an idea, that everything is thought. And this is the ultimate experience where all this transfer of training is leading. That everything is mental, that everything is thought, that there is no such thing as physical. Because ideas leave not their source, just like Christ could not leave the mind of God, that ideas do not leave the mind of the thinker. There's really only one of us, there's only one mind and one thinker, and the idea ultimately of projection, or this idea of manifestation, has no basis and no validity. It's just absolutely spiritually impossible when you go into it deep enough. And of course that's where all this defenselessness comes in. You know, you don't have to defend against anything external, because there is nothing external to be defended against. But it's a convincing. It's slow convincing when it seems like that objects are apart from mind, that objects have existence in and of themselves. That's the whole trick. And as you get into your function, and you go deeper into your function, you begin to feel the vastness of the mind, the vastness of even consciousness itself is in the domain of the ego, but you have an expanded consciousness, you feel the vastness of consciousness. And yeah, that's a good metaphor, Oscar, in the sense that when people think of Stephen Hawking, maybe they've read a lot of his books and they're aware of his positions on all different kind of theories and so on and so forth, and they think of him more and more as a mind, and less of this as a crumpled little body in a wheelchair. There's been some great movies this year. If we roll the clock back, you know, we can think back to 2001 Space Odyssey, and the horror at the end of the movie when HAL, the computer, basically takes over the spacecraft, the ship. And the horror was that the astronauts were no longer in charge, there was a machine in charge. Now we've got the Matrix, you know, which was the whole thing about the machines and the humans. And then this year, Johnny Depp came in with Transcendence, another movie that tends to show this terror around AI, artificial intelligence, as if we can call something artificial intelligence. In this case, the machines working faster, better than humans. talking about developing machines, computers that would basically be faster and have more knowledge and more processing than all the human beings ever in the history of the universe. And then the fear around this, like fear of loss of control. I was just reading an article about a week ago where they were talking about AI, and they said that now different countries like China and the United States, some of the major economies, are using more and more robots. Robotics and machines are getting more and more used, and so much so that productivity is climbing, because when they're getting the humans phased out and the machines phased in, the productivity is going a lot higher and higher. And then they said that basically they feel like the way it's going right now, that by the year 2045, so this is 2014, this is still within the lifespans of most people in the room. By 2045, the human being will no longer be the #1 species on planet Earth. That's within your lifetime. Humans will drop to #2.
That fits in with, did you see the movie Surrogates?
Yes.
With Bruce Willis?
Bruce Willis.
Where the humans just laid in a chamber,
yeah,
and manipulated
the avatar
their own
bodies
self out in the world.
The avatar body's kind of going out and, and doing all the interacting, and the humans are kind of just kind of very sedate and wearing their and controlling, but not wanting to go out where there's more threat of disease and everything. Just staying in the comfort. Talk about the comfort and convenience. Not leaving their bed. Letting the machines go out and do all the interacting.
The one out in the world was like in his late 20s and still had hair and all this kind of stuff. And when they showed Bruce, he's like, he's like old and gray and all this kind of stuff. Yeah.
It's interesting. What we make becomes our competitor, our enemy, actually.
Yeah. Well, the best thing about this, I have to continue on with my story, because they were projecting this to 2045, but they've been running experiments with robots, and they were using robots, I mean now, this is our day and age, and they, foregoing and finding scarce resources on the planet that are very valuable, scarce resources. So they're using computers to go and find that. Well, they did an experiment where they got these two computers to both go and start to search and find scarce resources on the planet. And then the computers were programmed to help each other find the scarce resources. But what they found was that the computers started lying to each other. Because they were finding scarce resources, and they wanted to be seen how well they were doing it. And the competitive thing came in. These are two robots. They've actually documented this study where the computers started lying to each other. Now, some people would find this was kind of shocking, like, wait a minute, these are machines, they can't be lying, machines don't lie. They just carry out the wishes of the humans. Okay. You see, everything in this world is a projection. Jesus says in the Course, you look within and then you look out based on the emotion that you find within. If you find fear, then you'll see a fearful world. If you find love, then you'll see reflections of love. But the world is just a mirror, and so that shouldn't be surprising. And then they did ponder. That's where they were pondering about 2045, when humans are now the #2 species on the planet, in our lifetime, so to speak. They said that this higher intelligence of the machines perhaps could ask the question, like, based on the human's track record of wars and destruction, devastation, pollution, and everything, that perhaps the humans are not worthy of continuing on. Perhaps the planet could evolve in a higher way without all this war and destruction. These are the kind of stories. This theme kind of comes into Johnny Depp's movie, except I only saw Johnny Depp's movie, Transcendence, where basically Johnny Depp was the scientist with this great mind. The people that are concerned about AI kind of shoot him, and poison kind of goes through his system, but his wife uploads his his consciousness, his memories and everything up onto the internet. So then suddenly we hear very calmly Johnny Depp's voice when she says, "How are you?" or "Where are you?" He says, "I'm everywhere." And that's more of a symbol of who we truly are. We're more truly who we are if we're everywhere than if we're in some time-space coordinate, almost like a robot taking up just a certain amount of space, having a limited thought process, and so on and so forth. We're more who we truly are is everywhere. And in the movie, there's a tremendous fear of this everywhere, because it's perceived as AI, artificial intelligence. Believe me, the consciousness and the awareness that's everywhere is not artificial. The human consciousness is artificial. The human consciousness is the AI, and the transcendent consciousness is not artificial at all. It's a reflection of God, of divinity. So it's great in the movie because all the way through the movie, and when it's this expanded awareness, there's this very calm voice of Johnny Depp that basically is just reflecting back his wife's wishes. She wants the world to be a better place. She would like to see a healed planet. And so he keeps reflecting, helping mechanisms to help heal the planet, heal the pollution, eliminate conflict and war. It's interesting, even in some of these movies like, initially there was Invasion of the Body Snatchers, then they came up with a movie called Invasion, where it was an invisible invasion. And once this alien force or whatever would come and take over the humans, they were very serene. In fact, I got the biggest kick out of these movies because people were telling me, "David, this is a horror movie," and I'm like, I don't think so. The ones that this invisible force is taking over, the people are passive, their crime starts immediately to drop. When the invasion starts to come, crime goes down, war stops, all these things start to stop with this so-called invasion, and yet the humans are freaking out because they're afraid of losing their individuality, their limited little consciousness, they're afraid that something is taking over their limited consciousness. It's very much like in Star Trek. There's the Klingons, there's the Romulans, there's all these different species that we discover through Star Trek, but nothing probably so horrifying as the Borg. The Borg assimilate human beings and individual consciousness, and Captain Picard and the Enterprise are really they've got a lot of pride around this individual consciousness, this individual separate awareness. And of course the Borg is like a collected consciousness that assimilates those in. It's still not so good of a metaphor because the Borg is almost like collectedness versus individuality, when what we're talking about is such an expansive awareness that it really is all that there is. It can't really assimilate anything into it because it's already everything. It's just that the ego is afraid of unified awareness. The ego is afraid of love. The ego is afraid of this expansive awareness. And that's why, as we go into this and we talk about unlearning the world, the resistance that you find in your own mind is the ego's resistance to wholeness, is the ego's resistance to love and light and oneness. And ultimately, it could actually be said that it's not your resistance. You're just feeling the ego's feelings as you go through this awakening experience.
You remember what used to scare the people on the Enterprise the most? What the Borg would always tell them? Resistance is futile.
Yes, that's it.
You will be assimilated.
Yes, yeah. And you might say that basically awakening is inevitable, and that's kind of a version of resistance is
Right,
futile.
exactly.
Yes.